The Senate calls out of control spending a national security threat and keeps spending anyway. Authored by the Ron Paul Institute, by Ron Paul. Last month, the U.S. Senate passed a resolution saying the over $34 trillion in growing national debt threatens our national security. A few days later, a bipartisan majority of the Senate voted for a $1.2 trillion spending bill. In addition to the usual increase in war and welfare spending, the bill funds gender transitioning for minors without parental consent and red flag laws, which allow law enforcement to seize individuals' firearms without due process. Before passing of the latest spending bill, the Congressional Budget Office, CBO, released a report predicting that the national debt would exceed the prior record of 106.4% of gross domestic product GDP by 2028. Interest payments on the national debt are estimated to reach $870 billion this year, more than the government will spend on the military. The CBO estimates that unless Congress cuts spending, which is highly unlikely, by 2025, interest on the debt will exceed not just military spending, but spending on the two biggest items in the federal budget, that is Social Security and Medicare. As Eric Bohm of Reason magazine points out, the CBO report understates how much federal spending will grow in the next several decades, since it cannot predict what crisis future Congresses and presidents will exploit to ramp up federal spending. As Bohm suggests, someone projecting 30 years ago how much government would spend in the future would not have included the increase in spending due to 9/11, the subsequent creation of a Homeland Security industrial complex, and forever wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, and housing meltdown or the COVID lockdown. The hypothetical budget projection would also not have predicted legislation like the Medicare prescription drug benefit or Obamacare. That the large and growing interest on the national debt puts pressure on the Federal Reserve to keep interest rates low. The Federal Reserve's rate increases, though relatively small, are one reason national debt payments rose by 32% last year. The need for the Federal Reserve to keep interest rates low will further erode the dollar's purchasing power, subjecting more Americans to the insidious inflation tax. It will eventually cause a loss of the dollar's world reserve currency status. This will result in a major economic meltdown that will likely lead to widespread civil unrest, the further growth of authoritarian movements on both the left and right, and new restrictions on liberty. The only way out of this is for Congress to begin winding down on warfare state. The good place to start is by cutting spending on militarism and foregoing interventionism. Saving from these cuts could be used to ensure those dependent on entitlement and welfare programs are not harmed as Congress winds down these programs. Responsibility for providing support for the truly needy should be returned to local and religious charitable institutions, while responsibility for education should be returned to the local communities and parents. Congress should also pass legislation requiring any new spending to be offset by cuts in other federal spending and forbidding the Federal Reserve from purchasing federal debt instruments. These steps will be opposed by the special interests that benefit from the current system, but they are the only way to ensure the blessings of liberty and prosperity to our posterity. And this is on Zero Hedge by Tyler Durden, by the Ron Paul Institute by Ron Paul. Please leave your comments and thank you for your support. Kindly support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.